the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. All the bridesmaids fell asleep. This story that we just heard of the 10 bridesmaids, often referred to as the parable of the wise and foolish bridesmaids, has on the surface an us and them feel to it. The wise ones who had the sense to bring extra oil, and the foolish ones who didn't. It's easy to separate the world into categories: wise and foolish, prepared and unprepared, attentive to God or forgetful of God's presence. But, wise or foolish, all the bridesmaids fell asleep. There is no distinction between wisdom and foolishness in that slumber. We're hearing this gospel passage on Remembrance Sunday, a day when we remember with love and gratitude those who gave their lives so that we might have freedom and security. A day when we remember those who continue to suffer the consequences of war. When we remember, we are not remembering distant characters in a story. We are remembering sons and brothers and fathers, daughters, sisters, mothers. We are remembering lives and relationships forever changed by conflict and violence. Our lives here in Canada would not look as they do were it not for those sons, fathers, brothers, mothers, sisters, and daughters. Our present is forever connected to the past, and our lives now are forever connected to those who have gone before us. We remember and we acknowledge that connection with love and gratitude. Remembering is about memories. It's about honoring those who have gone before us. It's about remembering with gratitude and about remembering so that we don't repeat mistakes. Remembering can also mean putting back together, and so back to the wise and foolish bridesmaids. This parable is likely written at least 50 years after Jesus' death, resurrection, and ascension. Those 50 years had seen the growth of Christianity, but it had also seen Christians punished and oppressed. This parable was an invitation to be ready when Jesus returned. It was an invitation to be steadfast in waiting. You might find yourselves wondering why the 5 bridesmaids who had oil didn't share. How were they so sure there wouldn't be enough? We'll never know, will we? One of the things that strikes me most is the idea that the 5 bridesmaids left and then found the door locked when they returned. I wonder what would have happened if they had waited in the darkness. What would have happened if they had been honest with the bridegroom, telling him that they had no fuel for their lamps, but hadn't wanted to miss his arrival? We are still waiting, more than 2,000 years later. We may be feeling like we are in the dark as we wait, and particularly as we make our way through this pandemic. I know I do some days. There is a call in this parable that is as resonant as it was when it was first told, to keep awake. How are we to keep awake in 2020? How are we to find light in the darkness? Remembering is part of keeping awake. Remembering, putting back together, is light in the darkness. Remembering is fuel for our lamps as Christians. What if wisdom and foolishness are not at opposite poles? What if it's not one or the other, but both, with and within each other, like darkness and light, faith and doubt? Barbara Brown Taylor describes faith and doubt, darkness and light, divine presence and absence as existing with and within each other, like distinct waves that roll out of the same ocean and roll back into it again. Acknowledging this with and within, this connection between and continuum of wisdom and foolishness, is part of the remembering that we are called to as Christians. There is a putting back together when we are willing to see ourselves, one another, and our world this way. Not opposites, one against the other, but connected in a continuum that is held together with God's love and grace. This is how we are to keep awake as Christians. Remembering the connections that are everywhere keep us awake to God with us in all things. Admitting that we all have the capacity for foolishness wakes us up and leads us to wisdom. Acknowledging connections fuels our lamps and gives us light in the darkness. We also hear today from Paul's letter to the Thessalonians. This letter came at a time when encouragement for those waiting for Jesus' return was much needed. It is this encouragement that is living and acting in these words for us today. Encourage each other. There is profound encouragement found and available for us to share with one another in acknowledging a continuum of wisdom and foolishness, of darkness and light, of faith and doubt. There is brokenness in our world. War, violence, oppression, injustice. These break us in our humanity. We can repair that brokenness by acknowledging connections between the past and our present. We do that on this Remembrance Sunday by remembering and honoring those who gave and give their lives for our present. We can repair brokenness by acknowledging the connections that are everywhere, right now. Reminding ourselves that we are all both wise and foolish, that we all experience both faith and doubt, and that there is both light and darkness in our world. This repairs brokenness as we acknowledge and trust that we are all in this together, held by God's love and grace. I'm sure you'll agree that it has been a tumultuous week in the U.S. Last night, President-elect Joe Biden addressed the nation, and he spoke of unity and healing. His words were light in the darkness, offering hope in a challenging time. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris also for the healing of a nation through unity. There is tremendous potential in this perspective for repairing brokenness in our world. Last week, St. Luke's made a bold statement of solidarity with those who are vulnerable and marginalized, with overwhelming support of the motion to authorize building renovations, to offer crucial amenities, showers, washrooms, laundry facilities in the basement of this building. Part of that motion was a commitment to move toward deeper collaboration with St. Luke's Table. At the heart of this deeper collaboration is acknowledgement that we are all, in this world, connected. We are all in this together, and it is together that we will keep awake to God's presence. It is together that we can shine a light in the darkness. It is together that we will repair the brokenness in our world.